Thanks for joining me. Good morrow, you magnificent godling. If this is your first time here, I'm the Reverend Colleen Callahan. This is a Magifester Central where we talk all about the ways we are all sleepwalking, more or less, through the dream of the world. Today we're going to talk about the concept from A Course in Miracles that says only that which is loving is true. But first, we need to turn this down just a bit more. That's better. Only that which is loving is true. True wealth, lucidity, and the reconciliation of the antinodes, apparent opposites, antinodes. There's an axiom in the Course in Miracles that has become, for me, the touchstone against which every other proposition is easily tested. Only that which is loving is true. Most of us hear that as a moral injunction. I don't. I hear it as an ontological statement. It's not saying you should be loving. It's saying if truth is that which survives every contextual transition, as in from the temporal to the eternal, then love is the only truth. That which is loving is real, capital R, because it translates perfectly through every venue and every state of being. That which does not survive the transition cannot ultimately be, therefore, real. It does not survive beyond the temporal venue in which it is experienced, except it be translated and reconciled as love, through lucidity, which is an act of love, a practice, a dedication, a discipleship to love. Now, this gives us a remarkably simple test for love itself. The test of reality. Suppose you die today. What remains? Not your bank account, it doesn't go with you. Not your reputation, that stays in the venue. Not your political affiliations, not your possessions, and certainly not your physical body. None of these survive the contextual transition that we call death, when the body falls off, and that's all it is. They belong only to earth venue and other venues like it where mortality seems to exist. What then does survive the transition from the temporal to the eternal? Love. Love alone. Integrity, born of love. Compassion, also born of love. Wisdom that recognizes itself as love. Lucidity, which is an act of love, a dedication to love. The capacity to recognize the great truths concealed in fine distinctions between what appears real within the venue's context and what remains real in the eternal context. These virtues belong equally to every context: love, integrity, compassion, honor. Therefore, they are not merely useful within this venue. Truth is reality with a capital R, and so these virtues are reality itself, components thereof. The first fine distinction is therefore this: truth is that which survives all translations within a venue and every transition between and across venues. Everything else has only contextual reality with a small r. Everything else is temporary. Everything else is relative. Everything else is just dream venue furniture. The greatest translation. Earth mistakes translation for wealth. True wealth is creation. But Most in earth venue confuse wealth for the proceeds of translations. The forest becomes lumber. The mountain becomes ore. The river becomes hydroelectric power. Human time becomes wages. Human suffering becomes enrichment of the elite who monetize human suffering. They, in fact, often create suffering so they can sell us solutions, all of which actually create more suffering so they can sell us more solutions. Attention becomes advertising revenue. Everything is translated into units of commerce. Nothing has actually been created, only converted. What people call wealth is usually nothing more than translated resources. The environment becomes monetized along with your quality of life because the environment we all share was plundered and degraded in order to make the plunderers rich at the cost of your health span and your enjoyment of your life in the degraded venue. Your labor becomes their profit. Your suffering becomes their leverage over you. The question is not whether translation is evil. The question is whether translation is mistaken for wealth, which is generative, not consumptive, and not just translational. Let's talk about true wealth. True wealth is not translational. It's generative. Love generates. The more you give it, the more you have it. This is how you recognize what is real, eternal, true. Wisdom generates more of itself. Forgiveness generates reconciliation. Lucidity generates more clarity. They create possibilities that did not previously exist. Hope, reprieve, healing, beauty, understanding. These are not conversions, they are creations. This is why the Empress in the tarot has always represented true wealth. Not because she possesses, because she generates. She is infinitely fecund. She continually brings forth abundance from within herself. She is the inexhaustible source expressing itself as inexhaustible wealth and abundance. Her dominion is not over imaginary others, but over herself, which is love, life, consciousness itself, in lucid awareness of what it is, even, maybe especially, while operating yet within the dream of what cannot be. And that is what Earth Venue is, a dream of what godlings cannot, in their eternal nature, actually experience, except in dreams. So, the great misunderstanding. What this world calls wealth is almost entirely venue currency. Useful, certainly. Necessary, often, but only because of the way we have set up this so-called civilization that devours its own in the name of imaginary progress. Is it real? No. Only that which is eternal, that which survives unchanged, the transition from temporal to eternal, is real, is true. If your fortune cannot cross the threshold of death, it belongs only to the venue. If your compassion survives, it belongs to reality. Capital R. This is precisely why Yeshua posed to us the question, what profit it a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? He was not condemning wealth. He was redefining profit. Real profit is measured by what survives translation from this venue into the eternal. Everything else is accounting that only pertains within the venue, and then only because of the predatory concepts of profit around which our civilization was built. And they are predatory. So let's talk about who the real paupers are. This is why I say something that sounds outrageous. Many whom the world calls rich are actually paupers. Not because they possess money, money doesn't make you poor, but because they mistake these translated assets for generation of wealth. They have accumulated what cannot survive. Meanwhile, the being is left with almost nothing. Who remain steadfast in love may possess infinite wealth. Dogs may be the wealthiest life forms on this planet. Dolphins and seals probably too. This civilization cannot recognize its riches because the venue only measures translation of one asset into another. Our concepts of profit and wealth are completely only venue specific. Reality, capital R, on the other hand, measures wealth by its generative capacity and engagement. Life is an apprenticeship, not to success, nor to power, not even to happiness. Life is an apprenticeship to love through adversity. Why adversity? Because contrast reveals. Adversity is contrast. Limitation is the contrast in which the limitless you is able to be discovered. Death is the contrast against which the eternal is understood. Apparent physical separation reveals real unity. Loss reveals that which cannot be lost, the eternal self, consciousness itself. Suffering is the contrast against which that which cannot suffer can notice its own eternal presence. Lucid consciousness itself, conscious of itself, no longer caught up in the gravitational wells of identification with the body, the story, the mind. The apparent opposite never creates reality. It is the contrast that allows reality, with a capital R, to be noticed, to be observed, to be revealed. The boon of all suffering is the revelation that you are, in fact, that which cannot suffer. Lucidity is therefore not just an achievement you undertake to attain so as to escape unnecessary suffering, although in its ability to provide that escape it has great value. More than anything, though, lucidity is a practice, a continual act of loving dedication to reality, with a capital R, which is truth, which is love. For love survives the translation across all venues of experience, all contexts of being. Therefore, lucidity is a discipline of your discipleship to love. Every day the dream of the world exerts gravitational pull. The personality says, I have been wronged, I need revenge. Justice demands vengeance. I am what happened to me. And pulled gravitationally into this identification with the story, lucidity is lost, and the dream becomes a nightmare. That gravitational pull is the result of conditioning. You knew you were an eternal godling when you first inhabited the baby body. And then the body matured. And as it matured, the world taught you to identify with the body, the story of its maturation, the mind built from the conditioned beliefs that ever and forever attacks your peace. The dream feels utterly convincing by the time the body has matured because you have forgotten who you are. Lucidity asks another question, a question that liberates you from the mistaken identifications the dream taught you to believe yourself to be. The question lucidity asks is who or what is aware of the story that I have been telling myself is me. The lucid do not deny, the lucid do not as, the lucid do this, practice lucidity, not to deny the story, but to remember the dreamer that they are. The dreamer that has dreamed the story and mistaken themselves for the story. When we remember the dreamer within the venue, we know reality does not happen to me. Reality does not even happen for me. Reality happens through me. It happens through me by way of the way I use my labels, the way I judge situations, the way I fall into the gravitational well of mistaken identifications, or I don't. When the dreamer awakens as the extension, nothing external necessarily changes. The body still hurts. It hungers. It has requirements. The world still presents the contrast against which you may discover the presence, capital P, of your true self, capital T. History still unfolds, but identification changes. You realize power was never in the personality. Power always belonged to the dreamer. Lucidity restores conscious continuity between the dreamer and the dream, what is real and what is imagined. Consensual worlds appear where countless points of view intersect, vectors of interpretation. Reality is experienced where those vectors of attention and conventions of interpretation converge in agreement. Oversouls extend themselves again and again into these venues, occupying every imaginable perspective, not because repetition is necessary, but because concepts become fully known only when experienced from every meaningful perspective. Victim, victor, vanquished, judged, accused, healer, destroyer, mother, child, refugee, beggar, king. Each experiential perspective illuminates and refines appreciation of another facet of the greater truth, which is love, transcending all of these transient, mistaken identifications. So let's talk briefly about true forgiveness with a capital T and a capital F. Justice is not vengeance. Justice is true forgiveness, not because nothing was experienced, but because nothing eternal was damaged. Nothing real, that is capital R, that is eternal, can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein we find peace. The dreamer remains untouched, although much was learned through the dream experiences of its extensions, its incarnations. The oversoul has further integrated, and so love was extended to reconcile what was unloving and could actually not ever be. We cannot bomb our way to peace. We cannot murder our way into consensus. Violence may temporarily rearrange circumstances, but it cannot reconcile separation. Only lucidity reconciles, and lucidity is a practice to which we dedicate our attention in order to waken within the dream, that we may serve as conduits by which lucidity spreads and suffering ends. Only the lucid dreamers can change the dream, and we must be in it to change it. So time is not endless for us here. We need to gain our lucidity quickly and then use it to transform the dream. Now let's talk about transformation, and the greatest experience of all, I think, in this venue is reprieve, or otherwise the wish fulfilled, the heart's desire. The greatest feeling in this venue is that it's reprieve, rescue, the heart's desire fulfilled. I recall wakening to that magic of the wish fulfilled on Christmas mornings as a child, when I wakened to see all the gleaming presents under the tree in a household that was pretty poor. My parents had secretly gone through so much, done without so much through the year, to save up the money to buy those gifts, to create that magic, that feeling, to give it to us, to witness it in our eyes. When the heart's desire is answered, fear dissolves and hope returns. I long to bless others with that feeling if ever I'm entrusted with great material resource. Not because money really matters to me, but because money is freedom, and rightly translated may become an instrument through which love generates that feeling of reprieve, of the heart's desire and the wish fulfilled. I fantasize about winning the lottery big, so I can spend millions to bring wells and food and shelter to Gaza. Imagine the feeling many would have in Gaza to see that the world has not forgotten them, that their needs and their suffering really does matter. The wealth itself, the money, not wealth, the money is not the gift. The generation of the feeling of reprieve, the wish fulfilled, is the real treasure. And you know real treasure, capital R, capital T, because the more you give it, the more you have it. Every apparent limitation exists so that the limitless eternal may remember itself while yet apparently limited within the dream. Every apparent death is the contrast against which the deathless eternal may recognize itself. Every apparent loss is the contrast by which the whole recollects its true self. Every apparent separation exists so that love may come to consciously know we cannot be apart from that which love makes us eternally a part of. Lucidity is the practice of refusing to mistake the translated assets for the source, which is true wealth, because it is generative, not translating the suffering of others into the assets of the few. Love is wealth. Truth is wealth. Honor, integrity, compassion are all generative, and they are wealth, true wealth, because the more you give them, the more you have them. This is how you know the economy of the eternal is operating within the specter of the dream of the world, the illusion. Lucidity is our discipleship to that true wealth, to truth, which is eternal, and the same in all contexts of operation, which is therefore love. Everything else is temporal bean counting, accounting. And so I remind you of Yeshua's comment wherein we find the great truths hidden in fine distinctions, not because that question condemns the wealthy, but because it asks the only accounting question that actually, finally, matters. What profit is it to gain the whole world if in doing so you fail to recognize the eternal wealth that has always been your own? What does it profit you to gain anything if in so doing you lose your soul, your integrity, your peace of mind, your self-esteem. Only that which is loving is true. Only that which is loving has real value. Capital R, capital V. Everything else is simply waiting to be translated back into a loving perspective. Do not look to those who created your suffering in order to sell you its solution for the reprieve you certainly deserve. Offer reprieve to others and so generate it out of your own eternal wealth. Consider this. The Course tells us that the opposite of love is fear. I tell you that fear comes from indifference to the suffering of others, and that this is the true opposite of love. And fear is the product of the indifference, fear of retribution. That fear creates a cycle of suffering in which the takers fear retribution they think they deserve, and in paranoia believe they must attack first those from whom they have taken. The perimeter that fear requires never ceases to expand. The more they take, the more they fear, the more they attack those whom they have stolen from. The way to end suffering is to make the apparent reasons for conflicts irrelevant, so that the fine distinctions may be revealed without so much suffering. In principle, if your neighbor nation believes they must kill your people to take the land, give them the land. If the fighting was actually motivated by the profit-getting of the military-industrial complex, removing the stated motivation for the war will reveal this. Gracious giving of what another thought to steal piles upon their heads hot coals of recognitions the would-be thieves cannot unsee. They must then realize what they traded to get the land. Their own integrity, blamelessness, and peace of mind are traded because of the suffering they were willing to inflict to take from others what they only thought they wanted. What they really wanted was the heart's desire of being accepted, loved, valued, safe, and trusted. The land they stole will be revealed poison to their happiness, and their own minds will indict them. Those who profit from wars will get nothing, not even illusory gain, because the land was given, and so there was no need to crank up the war machine of their profit-getting to kill everyone. Clarity will have a place to dawn in such a situation, and people will stop being so sucked into the gravity wells of false identifications with the stories that demand vengeance. I realize this seems a lot to ask from within the context of Earth Venue, but it offers in the place of what illusory losses it asks. Every real thing, capital R. This is how lucidity grows. It is how together we will surely put out that pesky, warring little eye. Like and subscribe. And for the love of God, please share these videos on the channel. Thank you for staying until the end for me, as I have stayed till the end for you.